In 1943, deep in the Pacific, U.S. Army engineers stared at a bomber and said something no pilot ever wants to hear. This plane should not fly. The aircraft was a B-25 Mitchell, but it didn't look like one anymore. Its glass nose was gone. Bomb racks were stripped, and in their place, 8 forward-firing 50-caliber machine guns, all aimed straight ahead. It wasn't built to bomb cities. It wasn't built to dogfight. It was built to do something far more dangerous. Hunt ships at wave-top height. Engineers warned. The recoil will rip the nose apart. The plane will stall at low altitude. One mistake and the crew dies instantly. They called it impossible. But 3 days later, Japanese naval commanders were sending frantic radio messages. Enemy aircraft destroying convoys at sea level. Ships burning. Crews missing. No defense. In just 72 hours, one pilot and his impossible B-25 would sink or cripple 12 Japanese ships, changing naval air warfare forever. This is the true story of the B-25 gunship. The aircraft engineer said couldn't exist, and the man who proved them wrong. A bomber that was failing its war. By early 1943, the Pacific War was brutal and unforgiving. Japanese supply lines stretched across thousands of miles of open ocean. Barges, freighters, troop transports, oil tankers, all vital to keeping their island garrisons alive. The U.S. Navy tried submarines. The Army Air Forces tried high-altitude bombing. Neither worked well. From 10,000 feet, bombers missed small moving ships. Japanese anti-aircraft fire shredded slow aircraft. And even when bombs hit the water near a ship, they often failed to sink it. Pilots came back frustrated. Commanders came back angry. Engineers came back with one terrifying question. What if we stop bombing ships and start shooting them? The man who would ignore the rules. One pilot kept repeating that idea louder than anyone else. He wasn't famous. He wasn't a general. He was just stubborn. Major Paul Papy Gunn, a former airline pilot, mechanic, and combat veteran. Gunn had already survived early Japanese attacks in the Philippines. He had flown damaged aircraft held together with scrap metal. And most importantly, he understood airplanes from the inside out. While other officers talked theory, Gunn walked around damaged B-25s and noticed something strange. The bomber could survive massive punishment, as long as it kept moving forward. So Gunn asked a question no one else dared to ask. Why are we dropping bombs from above, when we can kill ships from the front? The radical idea? The B-25. Mitchell was strong, fast, and stable at low altitude. So Gunn proposed something radical. Remove the glass bombardier nose. Strip out unnecessary equipment. Pack the nose with machine guns. Add side guns firing forward. Fly at mast height, 50 feet above the ocean. Instead of bombing runs, strafing runs. The goal was brutal and simple. Kill the gunners. Set ships on fire. Let explosions finish the job. Engineers stared at his sketches. 8 forward-firing guns meant massive recoil. At low altitude, one wrong move meant crashing into the sea, and Japanese ships were covered in anti-aircraft weapons. Their answer was unanimous. This will get everyone killed. Why engineers said it was impossible. The problems were real. 1. Structural stress. Firing 8 machine guns at once created violent vibration. Engineers feared the nose would crack mid-flight. 2. Weight distribution. Removing bombs and adding guns shifted the center of gravity. Too far forward, the plane would nosedive. 3. Low-altitude flight. The B-25 was never designed to skim waves under enemy fire. 4. Crew survival. At 50 feet, there was no time to bail out. To the engineering teams, it wasn't bravery. It was suicide. The decision that changed everything. But the Pacific War didn't care about perfect designs. Supplies were running out. Japanese reinforcements kept arriving, and commanders were desperate. So one general finally said the words that changed aviation history. Let him try. In a jungle airstrip workshop, mechanics worked day and night. They welded gun mounts by hand. They reinforced the nose with whatever metal they could find. They mounted 50 caliber machine guns wherever space allowed. When they finished, the plane looked monstrous. No glass nose, no sleek bomber profile, just raw firepower. Someone joked, "That thing looks like it eats ships." Engineers shook their heads. They still believed it wouldn't survive combat. The first combat mission. The day came. Gunn taxied the modified B-25 onto the runway. The crew knew the risks. No one spoke. Engines roared. The plane lifted. It didn't break apart. It didn't stall. It flew. Hours later, they spotted a Japanese convoy, multiple ships lightly escorted. Gun pushed the nose down. Lower, lower. At 50 feet, the ocean blurred beneath them. Japanese gunners froze. No bomber had ever attacked like this before. Then Gun squeezed the trigger. The day the sea caught fire. The moment Major Gun pulled the trigger, the B-25 didn't shake apart. Instead, it lunged forward, as if the aircraft itself wanted blood. 8 50 caliber machine guns fired in a single continuous roar, over 100 rounds per second tearing across the ocean. The Japanese gunners never expected this. They had trained to fire upward at high-altitude bombers. Their guns were angled wrong. Their timing was wrong. Their doctrine was wrong. By the time they realized the B-25 was attacking horizontally, it was already too late. The first ship, the lead vessel, was a medium-sized transport packed with fuel drums and supplies. Gun aimed not at the hull, but at the bridge. The first burst smashed the windows. The second burst cut down everyone inside. Within seconds, the ship had no one steering it. Then the bullets found fuel drums. Fire erupted instantly. Crewmen jumped overboard as flames raced across the deck. Secondary explosions followed, sharp, violent, uncontrolled. The B-25 roared past so low that spray hit the cockpit glass. Behind them, the ship was already doomed. Engineers were wrong about one thing. Back at the airstrip, engineers had feared the recoil would tear the nose apart. But they misunderstood something crucial. The B-25 wasn't fragile. It was overbuilt, designed to survive flak bursts, engine failures, and battle damage. The airframe absorbed the recoil and kept flying straight. Instead of fighting the guns, the aircraft used them. The forward momentum stabilized the plane, turning it into a flying battering ram. The Japanese response: panic. The convoy erupted in chaos. Ships scattered. Gunners fired wildly. Tracer rounds flew everywhere, mostly missing. At wavetop height, the B-25 was almost impossible to track. Anti-aircraft shells exploded above it. Machine gun fire passed behind it. The Japanese had never trained for this kind of attack. This wasn't bombing. This was execution. Second pass, a deadly lesson. Gun didn't climb away. He banked. Hard. The B-25 came around for a second run, lower than before. This time he targeted a cargo ship loaded with ammunition. The crew saw the plane coming. They opened fire. Too late. The nose guns stitched across the deck. Ammo crates detonated like firecrackers. Then came one massive explosion. The ship split open. Smoke climbed thousands of feet into the sky. The ocean swallowed the wreckage. The crew realizes what they've become. Inside the B-25, no one spoke. They were too focused, too locked in. They weren't bomber crew anymore. They were hunters. Each pass followed the same deadly rhythm. Approach at sea level. Aim for crew and fuel. Fire until the ship burned. Pull away just above the waves. It was terrifying. It was precise. And it was working better than anyone imagined. The third ship, and a warning. The third target tried to escape. It turned hard, zigzagging through the waves. Gun adjusted. He led the ship slightly, firing ahead of its path. Bullets tore through the engine room. The ship slowed, then stopped. Smoke poured out. Gun didn't stay to watch. He didn't need to the aftermath. When the B-25 finally climbed away, the sea behind them looked unreal. 3 ships burning, one sinking fast, oil fires spreading across the water. The crew had expected resistance. They had expected damage. Instead, they had rewritten the rules of naval air combat. The shock back at base. When Gun landed, engineers rushed the aircraft. They expected cracks, loose panels, structural damage. They found none. The nose was intact. The mounts were solid. The plane was combat ready. One engineer reportedly said quietly, "It shouldn't have worked." But it had. And now commanders were paying attention. A deadlier idea is born. That single mission proved something terrifying. A low-flying, heavily armed B-25 could destroy ships faster than bombers, submarines, or torpedoes. Word spread fast. Within days, more aircraft were modified. More guns, better armor, improved tactics. What started as an impossible experiment was becoming a new doctrine. When the hunt became a trap, the first attack stunned the Japanese. The next ones terrified them. By the second day, Japanese naval commanders finally understood what they were facing. This wasn't a bomber. This wasn't a fluke. It was a new weapon. And new weapons demand new defenses. The Japanese adapt. Convoys changed formation. Ships sailed farther apart to avoid chain destruction. Extra machine guns were welded onto decks. Gunners were ordered to aim low, just above the waves. Most importantly, fighter escorts were assigned. Fast, agile Japanese fighters, Zeros, began patrolling above convoys, waiting for the gunships to appear. The message was clear. Next time they won't escape. Day 2, the ambush. Gun led a small formation of modified B-25s toward a known supply route. They expected ships. They didn't expect silence. No smoke, no movement, no obvious targets. It felt wrong. Then the warning came. Fighters, hi! 3 o'clock! Zeros dropped from the clouds like knives. A bomber against fighters. A B-25 was never meant to fight a Zero. It was heavier, less agile, slower to turn. At altitude, fighters would tear it apart. But Gun wasn't at altitude. He slammed the nose down. The B-25 dove toward the ocean, skimming wave tops once again. The Zeros followed, and immediately paid for it. The deadly low-altitude advantage. At low level, everything changed. Zeros lost room to maneuver. They risked hitting the water. Their advantage disappeared. The B-25's forward guns now mattered. When a Zero crossed the nose, Gun fired. One fighter exploded midair. Another pulled up too late and clipped the waves. The ocean claimed it. The cost of flying low. But the sea was just as deadly as the enemy. One B-25 hit a sudden wave crest with its prop wash. The plane shuddered. The left engine coughed. For a terrifying second, it looked like they would cartwheel into the water. The crew braced. Gun held it together, barely. The ships reappear. Out of the chaos, the convoy emerged. 6 ships, tightly packed, heavily armed. This was the moment Japanese planners had prepared for. This was also their mistake. The most violent attack yet. Gun led the charge. The B-25s split up, attacking from different angles. Deck guns fired wildly. Tracers filled the air. Then the gunships hit. Crewmen fell where they stood. Fuel ignited. Explosions rolled from bow to stern. One transport burned from end to end. Another lost power and drifted helplessly. A third vanished in a towering column of smoke and fire. The near disaster. On the pullout, Gun's aircraft took hits. Warning lights flashed. Hydraulic pressure dropped. Smoke filled the cockpit. For a moment, ditching seemed inevitable. But the engines kept turning. The B-25 limped away, alive. The tally grows. By nightfall of day 2, multiple ships sunk. Others crippled and abandoned. Japanese convoys rerouted or canceled. The impossible gunship was becoming a nightmare. Apanisa radio intercepts. American intelligence intercepted frantic messages. Enemy aircraft attacking at sea level. Guns ineffective. Losses severe. The tone was no longer confusion. It was fear. Day 3, the final push. Gun knew the window was closing. The Japanese would adapt further. More fighters. Heavier guns. So day 3 had to count. They flew again at dawn. Low. Fast. Silent. The 3 days that changed naval warfare. Dawn on the 3rd day broke over the Pacific like a warning. The sea was calm. Too calm. Major Gun knew what that meant. The Japanese would not let yesterday happen again. The largest convoy yet. Scouts reported it first. A long line of ships cutting through the water. Freighters, troop transports, fuel ships, protected by escorts bristling with guns. This wasn't a supply run. It was a lifeline, and Gun had only a handful of B-25 gunships to stop it. The final decision. Standard tactics said attack from multiple angles. Gun ignored them. Instead, he chose something even more dangerous. A head-on attack, straight down the convoy's throat. If it worked, the gunners would be overwhelmed. If it failed, no one would survive. The descent. Engines throttled back. The B-25s dropped until their shadows touched the waves. The crews could see faces on the decks now. Japanese gunners raised weapons. Officers shouted orders. Then the gunships accelerated. The moment of impact. At point-blank range, Gun fired. The combined gunfire was deafening. Decks vanished in splinters. Bridges were erased. Crew after crew fell before they could fire. The first ship erupted in flames. The second lost control and veered wildly. The third took a direct hit to its fuel stores. Fire raced across the water. When the Japanese line broke, convoy discipline collapsed. Ships turned into each other. Gunners fired blindly. Smoke blocked sightlines. That chaos was deadly, because chaos favored the attackers. The 12th ship. It was a large transport packed with troops. It tried to run. Gun chased it. He stayed low, steady, relentless. The gun spoke again. The ship slowed, stopped, then burned. When it finally rolled and sank, the count was undeniable. 12 ships. 3 days. The escape. Japanese fighters arrived too late. They chased the B-25s, firing desperately. But fuel was low. The gunships were faster at low altitude. One by one, they vanished into cloud and distance. Silence after the storm. Back at base, no one cheered. They just stared. The damage reports didn't seem real. Engineers walked around the gunships again. This time they didn't shake their heads. They nodded. The official reckoning. Commanders reviewed the results. 12 ships sunk or destroyed. Supply routes disrupted. Enemy morale shaken. The conclusion was clear. The impossible. Aircraft had delivered the most effective anti-shipping strikes yet seen. A new doctrine is born. Orders went out immediately. More B-25s would be modified. More guns, more armor. More crews trained for low-level attack. What started as an experiment became doctrine. The B-25 gunship was now official. The legacy. This wasn't just about one pilot or one plane. It changed how air power fought ships. Low-level attack. Overwhelming firepower. Precision over altitude. Naval warfare would never be the same. The war moved on. New aircraft were built. New weapons were invented. But the lesson of those 3 days in the Pacific never faded. Engineers had been right about one thing. The B-25 gunship should not have existed. It broke design rules. It ignored doctrine. It demanded pilots who flew closer to death than safety. And yet, it worked. Because war does not reward perfect theories. It rewards ideas that survive contact with reality. Major Gunn never sought fame, but his impossible aircraft rewrote air combat, proving that sometimes the most dangerous idea is also the one that wins wars. And somewhere over the Pacific, 12 ships burned as proof. If you think modern weapons are terrifying, remember this. Sometimes the deadliest machines in history were built from desperation, scrap metal, and one man's refusal to accept impossible. Like, subscribe, and stay with us, because the next story is even deadlier.